Living in harmony is possible if you know your emotions and how to handle them. I am Dr. Carmen Roman, and I will share with you the current psychology by myself or by interviewing experts who will inspire you. Learn how to live a life of fullness and how to recover your emotional harmony. Welcome to Emotions in Harmony. Welcome back, my dear amigos in harmony. We are here with another episode, and this time is a topic that we really were waiting for it for a long time. We are talking about addictions. We are talking about our family members who suffer from an addiction, and we are talking about how to help each other during this difficult time of being addicted to something. So for that, of course, we needed to wait until we have the best guest we could have for this topic. So we have Dr. Jessica. And Jessica is a doctor in psychology, in clinical psychology at Palo Alto University. She has a bachelor in psychology from the university, from the UC Santa Cruz. Perfect. And she works with transgender identified clients. This is part of your work.
That's part of my work, yes. I see a wide array of clients, young adults as well.
Yeah. You help clients to help recover from addiction, like drugs, alcohol,
workaholism, absolutely.
Thank you for helping me with my English.
Yeah. Oh, you're great.
Codependency and other compulsive behaviors. So she also provides training to organizations, and this is what I learned today. She help women to become a boss. So we are going to bring her again to teach us how to be the boss. Yay!
Yes, I love helping empower people.
Yes, please. So working with to decrease the stigma in the mental health care system is what is Dr. Jessica very passionate about. And she's going to be the president next year of the local psychological association, the Santa Clara County Psychological Association, and I think we are going to be very lucky with that. And you also help to develop the program at Kaiser, the psychiatric.
So I have a kind of varied work history, but I've been really lucky to work with some amazing organizations, including Kaiser Permanente, which is a huge healthcare organization. So I was happy to do work with them. It's been a long journey. And I first want to just say thank you for having me on. I know we met at one of the Santa Clara County Psychological Association events where you got an award. So very well deserved. So I've been honored to work with, large health care organizations like Kaiser. I've worked in the private sector. I've worked for other world-renowned treatment facilities. And then also I've always kept my own practice, private practice, where I also offer trainings and consultation to organizations. But really what kind of led me into that in a couple of sentences, just like my elevator pitch, my own personal journey of recovery. I grew up kind of exposed to addiction and substance use, and then that continued on through my adolescence. And I ultimately struggled with my own addiction as a young person and I got sober really early at 19 years old. And at that point, I didn't know exactly how it would look, but I knew that I wanted to dedicate my profession to helping others, to helping young people, to helping other vulnerable populations, and folks struggling with substance use included in that. So I was able to go on, like you said, and pursue my bachelor's degree and then ultimately my doctoral degree in clinical psychology.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's the most beautiful. It's like you are informed by your own life to provide the therapy to others.
Yeah, and I think some of the most inspired work we can do is the work that comes from a place deep in our hearts where, we've lived some of it. I don't think that always has to be the case. But for me, where I've been able to blend my own personal journey and take that and couple it with the science, with the research, and try to impact as many people as possible. And for me, when I think about treatment for addiction, kind of on this really high level, I think of it really as a healing process and very much about, you mentioned how I do work around empowerment with people. And really, to me, the best treatment is being able to empower and inspire others to take care of themselves again.
Yeah.
And when I think about what happens when I say addiction, thinking now specifically about substance use, there's such a big part of that where we lose part of ourselves to the addiction. And there's such a shame process that can be part of that, where we have to realize our self-worth again.
Yeah.
We have to realize what we can offer the world again, that we do have something to offer. And so I think part of the healing process from addiction is finding that wholeness inside of ourselves again. And there's a number of ways to get there. And I of course, want to put this disclaimer out that if someone out there, one of your listeners, feels they're struggling with either substance use or mental health, whatever it is, number one, I'm going to go off on my opinions today, but please seek your own professional help and advice. It's so important. And you mentioned the term stigma. And I think just the fact that we're sitting here talking about this and giving voice to it, to me, that's already half of the battle.
Yes.
Because so much of, like I said, we were saying mental health, but also just addiction, it lives in the dark. That's where it breeds and that's where it multiplies. Because there's, again, such a shame process and denial around it. And what happens as we go through the struggles with substance use. So I'm so glad that you're having this as a topic.
Yeah. I think not that many people in therapy, or they sometimes they take time to share. And it's painful to acknowledge and to say, I am putting in my body something that doesn't feel right sometimes, but I need it. Yeah.
Well, I think what you're talking about is, it's talked about often in the 12-step community or community programs, but it's kind of admitting we have a problem with substance use, drugs, and alcohol. First of all, how scary that can feel.
Yeah.
And even if, for instance, this is just an example, let's say I had a therapist I've been working with for years, I may not even feel comfortable telling them.
Yeah.
Because it can feel like I've done something bad or I'm broken in some way. But how I really view a lot of substance use and addiction, and to be clear, I think there's multiple pathways to addiction, and there's definitely evidence-based treatment out there for it. And at the same time, there's different ways people get to that struggle. But to be able to know that you're not broken, there's not something inherently wrong with you at your core. You're a person who's now struggled with something that you've done. Right? And so to be able to, in many respects, I think, separate ourselves from this idea that we're bad because maybe we've used drugs or alcohol. Because I think that can act as a barrier to seeking help.
Yeah.
That we might suddenly be less than in some respect. Even though the truth of it is, we all have something. I mean, of course, there's a point, and again, if a listener thinks you're struggling, please talk to someone about this. But I think for many people, there comes a point where you kind of know it's not just the party anymore.
Yeah.
Or it's not
anymore.
just, exactly. Or maybe the benefits that it had, for whatever reason that you were using a substance specifically, it's just not working anymore. And perhaps it did for a while.
Yeah.
And so then it's going, well, what do I do now, right? So it's, first off, maybe we don't want to talk about it with someone. But even starting, again, I'm thinking about an adult in my mind. I think it's harder with teens in many ways because they're still kind of figuring out what life is, which I could talk about a bit. But having the courage, I think it takes so much courage to tell even one person, to tell a close friend, to tell a family member, to tell a therapist.
Yeah.
Hey, I think I might be drinking a little bit too much, or I don't know. What do you think? Getting other people's ideas.
I mean, something to tell ourselves. That's I think the huge part, yeah?
Yeah. And so for me, when I work with people who are coming in and either they know that there's some substance use going on or they're realizing it, what a huge amount of courage.
Yeah.
And I'm a little biased, but I think people that struggle with addiction are just some of the most wonderful, brilliant, creative people I've ever had the honor and privilege
they were
to work
experimenting in the first place because they wanted to learn something different.
Well, and sometimes that's the case. But like I said, everyone has different pathways to addiction. There may be trauma. There may be a predisposition genetically.
Sorry.
There's so many.
That's true.
But I think, but you're right. That might be one of the pathways is being creative, right? And I think sometimes we don't have to be in one particular camp to then have this cluster of symptoms that we now struggle with. And I think something about right now, we're seeing a lot of changes in the industry. The healthcare landscape is changing. I think there's really exciting things going on where there's more of an embracing around mental health treatment and addiction treatment. And so I think we're seeing that go mainstream, which is really exciting. It's kind of coming out of the therapy office like we are here. It's coming out of the lab or the classroom setting. And it's coming to the mainstream to go, it's okay to talk about these things. There's not, again, I'll probably say this over and over, but there's not something wrong with you. And guess what? The great news is there's treatment. And when I work with so many families, I say, something I think I say to everyone is, you've already made the greatest step just by showing up. To show up whether you go to there's a lot of different resources out there, but whether you tell your primary care doctor or you tell someone at a community clinic or you come and see a private practice psychotherapist, just by showing up to that first session, you've beaten some odds there already.
Yeah.
And so to me, it takes courage just to start that conversation.
I saw in your bio that you did a lot of research in Latino families.
So I did.
Something different? Are we? Do we have some disparities or?
Well, it's so interesting because there absolutely are cultural differences across the globe.
Yeah.
I think what you might be referencing too is, it feels like a long time ago now. When I did my doctoral thesis on the Latino population actually being arrested for public intoxication.
Yeah.
And so from that work itself, I didn't necessarily see differences because I wasn't researching substance use specifically. It was more so arrest rates. But I think what you're speaking to is, are there differences across cultures?
Yes.
And is there something specifically that we can do?
Something specific, because a lot of our families, most of our families are Latino families.
Yeah.
And Chinese.
Yeah.
We are, our second country that listens to us is China.
Wonderful.
So is something different culturally? Did you find something?
Not in my research, although there is research out there. So I would, of course, encourage people, if you're interested, to look into specific researchers because there are wonderful researchers and authors out there that specifically research the Latino population, Asian population. But when I think about it there's a few things that come to mind, and this is more anecdotal on my part, is absolutely there's always going to be cultural differences that need to be taken into account. But I think also thinking about one's culture, one's community, one's family. Culture starts in the family.
Yeah.
And whether it's a Latino population, Asian population, is what are those strengths that you can already build upon? I think so much of what happens in addiction is isolation. And so, again, I don't come from a Latino family, but I think you do, for instance. And I think knowing, do I have certain strengths in my family, my community, my culture that I can build upon? Are there people I can reach out to? Do I practice a particular religion that could be helpful? Do I have a particular spiritual practice that could be helpful? So I think number one are there certain things I can draw on from my culture that are already strengths?
Yes.
Especially to break down that isolation. Another piece, I think, is to know that whatever background you come from, to have the right to advocate for the treatment that you need. So if you want a therapist with the same cultural background, you show up to a community clinic or hospital, say that you'd like a therapist with the same background. Advocate for that.
Yes.
Say, I want someone that speaks the same language. Of course, language isn't all of culture.
Yes.
But if you want to be matched with someone, there are resources out there.
Yeah.
You can get resources that are in a particular, whatever language that you're more comfortable with. Sorry about that.
I always have the joke that choosing a therapist is kind of choosing the right pair of shoes. Yeah, it's like you need to really go and shopping for it. You really need to go and look and take the first session or something. And when we are in the community agencies, you still have a voice, a little bit sometimes, but you still have a voice and say, can I have female instead of male, or can I have Latino? Or
Exactly.
And not many people know that.
So, and then if you meet with that person that doesn't feel like the right pair of shoes, going, I don't want those shoes anymore.
No. Let's move on. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that can be really hard because, again, let's say we're already coming in feeling shameful, feeling broken. So now I have not only the courage to walk through the door, but now I need to have the courage to ask for a specific therapist with a particular background.
Yeah.
So I am so inspired by my own clients every day, and really anyone that is going to seek help, because how humbling that is.
Yes.
The other thing that just came to mind when you were asking about, is there something specific to the Latino population, and thinking about strengths of particular cultures, is I think number one, just being connected to your culture, right? So are there particular traditions that you have in your culture that could, again, maybe perhaps help you connect with others to talk about what's going on?
I think something that I like about our Latino culture is the togetherness. Yeah. So if somebody, for instance, have a suicide attempt, they have less time to do it because if you are sad, they come and take you out and they watch a movie with you, and they don't leave you that much alone.
Yeah.
So it's not that much time to commit suicide. Yeah.
It's great to hear
so
that.
So the number of the percentage of suicide in Mexico is less than here, I think. But I also see that in the addiction, it playing the opposite role. It's like if the person drinks alcohol too much or do some substance too much, they are not sometimes strong enough to say, hey, that's wrong. This togetherness plays against.
And so it's interesting what you talk about, and I won't speak specifically to Latino culture necessarily, but I will say the family system.
Yes.
And I think so much what we see, and I've seen folks from all different backgrounds. We're so lucky, I know, here in the Bay Area to have people from all over the world, which is one of the reasons I love living in the Bay Area and practicing here. But thinking about, there's this term, and there's a number of different researchers and authors that speak to it, like Claudia Black, who's a very well-known author, but thinking about the addicted family system. And on a really basic level is, I see my family members struggling. I don't want to see them struggle, but it's also really hard to say anything.
Yes.
Because I think what happens as a family member, and I've not only treated this, but I've lived it, is it's almost like if we say something, it might make it more real.
Yes.
Like that acknowledgement of the problem, whether it's substance use or mental health issue or any other kind of struggle. It's like if I say something to my, brother, mother, sister, husband, it might make it more real for me, which is going to be hard to acknowledge, because then now I have to do my own work.
Yes.
Right? It might be a conflict. Perhaps, maybe that person might get upset. So there can be some fear there. Yeah. And I think what this speaks to is getting support as a family member and loved one of someone who might be struggling with addiction.
If I am the mother of somebody who is addicted, what I do?
Exactly.
What do you think I can do?
Well, and what if, let's say, again, these are just hypotheticals, but what if I'm the mother or wife or sister, a loved one struggling with substance use and possibly addiction, and that person doesn't want to stop?
Oh, yeah.
That's tough. That's incredibly hard.
Yeah.
And so knowing that, let's say me as the family member, I now need to seek my own support. And so I would, again, encourage any listeners, if you are that loved one or that family member, know that you can seek your own support too, even if that family member doesn't want to get help. And so similarly, you can go to, a community clinic, if you have someone in private practice you can talk with, and also get support from your own friends.
Yeah.
The other thing is there are groups in the community that are like support groups similar to 12-step, designed for family members that you can attend. So there's various options. But I think as I even say this out loud, my heart just breaks a little bit because I know it so well. And I have so much compassion for that.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes it's really hard to hear, oh, just take care of yourself. Just practice self-care and you'll be okay.
Yeah, how?
Because watching a loved one struggle with addiction, it's heartbreaking.
It's painful.
It's incredibly painful. And at the same time, helping ourselves get out of that denial process, however painful that may be, is going to walk us down that path of healing.
Thank you for saying that. It's like, it's so easy to say, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
It's so easy and wow, like, no.
And it's so hard.
No, it's so hard.
And I'll go off on a little tangent. I think the term self-care has become kind of very trendy this last couple years especially. And it's going, well, what does that really mean? To me, real self-care is things like setting good boundaries and being honest with ourselves and honest with our loved ones. I actually think self-care is really hard work.
Yes.
And it's not easy. And I think sometimes certain days it can look like if maybe you have a relaxing day, or if I think about spas for some reason, or like wellness, but it's not always like that.
No.
I think some true self-care is, again, it's a courageous act of self-love.
Yeah.
That's my definition I'm coining right now, is self-care is a courageous act of self-love. And one of the best ways we can help our family members struggling with addiction and mental health is to practice self-care.
We didn't touch that much into the electronic cigarette.
Electronic cigarettes, it's a hot topic right now.
But is there something you can tell us in a minute?
In a minute, it's tough. I mean, there's so much controversy around electronic cigarettes right now. There's a lot of stuff going on policy-wise, politically. At the end of the day, it's, in my mind, and I'll speak to this generally, many things can be addictive. But as we know, this substance, nicotine itself, is highly addictive just on just looking at the neurotransmitters alone. We know that it's physiologically addictive in the way that it impacts the brain. We know that from the research, that's clear. And so just because we always have the information doesn't mean people don't do stuff. Meaning, we know that alcohol harms our body, people drink. We know that cigarettes can impact our body and our brains, we do it. And so what I would just encourage is try to get as informed as possible about the consequences, that, hey, just because something is legal doesn't mean it's good for us.
Doesn't mean it's good
doesn't mean, and I always operate from the standpoint of a healthcare professional. I go, legal and healthy don't always have an overlap. And so, so I would just say stay informed. And if you're, let's say, a parent dealing with a young person where you're concerned, just keep those lines of communication open.
I really appreciate your vulnerability.
Thank you.
Your knowledge and your vulnerability, because don't come together so often.
Yeah.
So thank you for that.
Thank you.
And of course, I have like tons of questions for you.
Welcome back.
Yeah, please, we need you back. And
I'd love
we need you back to teach us how to be a boss.
We will talk about how to be a boss next time.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Thank you for listening. Of course, time is of essence here. And please take care. Listen this again if you need to. Listen carefully, dear to your heart, and share it. Thank you, and see you the next time. Bye for now. We have reached the end of another episode of the podcast Emotions in Harmony. See you the next week. Visit www.emotionsinharmony.org, where you can subscribe, find the notes, and be in direct contact with me. Thanks for listening.